Our next guest is quite an inspiration and a model of fearlessness. 26 years ago, at the age of 24, Hector Picard was working as an electrician on a substation transformer. He was electrocuted not once, but twice with 13,000 volts. The first time went through his right arm and out of his right foot. The second hit was in his left arm, and it went out of his left hip. He suffered second and third degree burns over 40% of his body and lost all of his right arm and half his left. At the hospital, they induced a coma for 4 weeks. When they brought him out of the coma, he found that they had removed his right arm and half his left. Rather than feeling sorry for himself over the unexpected loss in his life, he set on a new course. Today, Hector is a triathlete, a distance cyclist, a motivational speaker, father, husband, and businessman. Most importantly, he urges people to be inspired and to go out there and live, to figure out their challenges, to make modifications, and to challenge themselves. No excuses, don't stop living is Hector's slogan. I'm humbled to be here with today's guest, Hector Picard. Hector, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, David.
Tell us about your story and how this initially happened 26 years ago.
Yeah, like you mentioned before, I'm working at the end of the day, I'm working as a substation electrician apprentice, and my job was to remove some equipment from the deactivated transformer. So that was transformer number 2. So I walked in between two of them. The one on the right was on, the one on the left was off. I made a right turn. As I climbed up this 2-story structure, made contact, and 13,000 volts went through my right arm, down my side, blew out the top part of my foot, and on the way down, I must have grabbed again because I hit it again with my left, and it went out my hip, and I don't remember any of it. This was actually told to me. They heard 2 explosions, and I was on fire, and next thing you know, I'm waking up 30 days later from a coma.
And 30 days just gone. Wow. Yeah. Hey, as you know, I can kind of relate. I lost my dad when I was 3 years old to a similar accident. He was electrocuted at work. And as it turned out, he was on a construction rig, and just there was no getting off when it happened. Interestingly, though, when I talk to you about your story, it's amazing. And I think about all those pictures I see of people doing triathlons and how they first dive into the water, and there's people kicking, swimming over other people, hitting other people. Yeah, how do you do it?
Very carefully.
Yeah.
At first, it was like, all right, let me see if I could go up front with everybody. No, there's no chance of it. So I learned to stay either towards the back or to the side and try to avoid contact. You waste so much time with contact, and then there's always the fear of drowning. You know, I don't want to drown. So 2 very important issues. But I learned how to swim on my back just using my legs, and it's one of my favorite parts of the triathlon.
Yeah, swimming on your back. That was because I was always curious as to how you actually did that. I have a tough enough time swimming a distance with 2 arms and 2 legs. I can only imagine the challenge.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. But you know, I put it out there. The first time I tried one, I said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get this done. And I just got hooked to the sport, and I turned it into a career. And I mean, I love it. I love the sport.
And now you started an organization called Don'tStopLiving.org. Which is wonderful, which I think is a great slogan. And it's a great slogan also for retirees, for our viewers, because the reality of it is that a lot of people go into retirement with fear. And if you think about, what Hector has been able to overcome here, if you're able to do that without fear, then clearly our viewers going to retirement should be motivated to do the same. How did you initially overcome that fear?
I've always been hard-headed. When somebody told me you can't do something, no, I set off to do it. The fear was always there, especially, having no arms, riding a bike and going 20, 30 miles per hour, there's a lot of fear involved. But being prepared and working hard and training myself, I get over the fear and just concentrate on the goal, which is what we all do these things for.
Absolutely, yeah. Now, you must have had some difficult times early on. When you first woke up out of a coma after 30 days, as you said, did you find yourself depressed? Did you find yourself angry? Did you find yourself, praying to God, why me? Why this happened to me? Blaming?
All the above. Definitely, I didn't know what my future was going to be like. All I did was concentrate on my 1-year-old and said, all right, I'm alive. I got a second chance at life. What am I going to do with it? And I wanted to be a father to her and a husband to my wife and move on. Yes, I have no harms, but I'll figure it out. You know, the rest of me is still working fine.
Absolutely. Do you find yourself angry at any point, even for the doctors? Angry that, gee, couldn't you have saved my arms? Couldn't you have done anything like that?
You know, I've always been a problem solver, and when the accident happened and I'm conscious of what's going on, I'm thinking, well, they could have done this, could have done that, but no. They had to do what had to be done to save my life.
That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. I love the courage because, you know, again, it's a lot of people, as our viewers know, some of them, you know, some of you, when you get close to retirement, if you feel like, gee, I want to retire at a certain age and I can't, and you know you have not quite enough money for retirement, and then you start the blame game. Maybe it's a broker where an investment went wrong and the anger comes in. And here's a great example right in you, Hector, that shows instead of the blame game, instead of anger, how to say, how do I turn lemons into lemonade? You know, how do I do this? How do I move on with my life? And again, I'm humbled to be here with you today. We're going to take a big commercial break just now, and we'll be back in just a minute. And stay with us because I want to ask Hector some more difficult questions about how he overcome the fear and other limiting beliefs. We'll be right back after the break. Now, a lot of retirees become depressed because, as I mentioned right before the break, you get close to retirement. Maybe you're not exactly sure how you're going to retire or if you have enough to retirement. And Hector, you know, I'd have to guess that you went through some of that depression too early on. Yeah, how did you overcome that aspect of it?
I'm all about thinking about the positives. I don't dwell too much on the negative parts, and you know, being like this, I couldn't dwell on it, or else I wouldn't be able to live my life to the fullest. So I just concentrate on the positives and little steps and little successes here and there, and it just got me to where I'm at now.
Mm-hmm. Now, there must have been some setbacks along the way, whether either you start off on the ramp to recovery, and then either you allowed fear to creep back in, or maybe some kind of depression or concern. You know, tell us about that, if you can perhaps recall one of those stories when you had such a setback, and how you handle that, because I know these things can go in waves, and you have good times and bad times like anything else.
Well, I like to refer to the most traumatic moment in my life. It wasn't the accident. It was almost 20 years later that my ex-wife, or at the time was my wife, decided to do the wrong thing. And I had one choice, you know, do I stick with it? Do I deal with it? And well, she continued doing it, and I figured, you know, all right, she doesn't want to be with me. So I had to move on from that and go out in the dating scene, and it led me to the sport of triathlon and all these great things that came about this really tough moment. And I could have taken there were only two choices: either live or just let it beat me down. And I wasn't going to let that happen.
Yeah, and that was a setback. I mean, if you had overcome the setback when you were 24 years old, you know, the setback of that you experienced with your ex-wife, as difficult as it might have been, the reality of it is at least that's a setback that you were in good company, as 50% of the population or more had incurred that. Now, you started this organization, Don'tStopLiving.org, and how long ago was that you started that?
Well, I use it as a vehicle to bring attention to the causes I raise money for. And I started that in 2009. My brother said, "Hey, here's a great name for your website." I go, "All right, sounds great. That's my motto. That's what I believe in. You know, I'm not going to stop living. I'm going to live it to the fullest." And you know, it just creates attention. And what I do is I raise money for children's charities, and but I use that as a vehicle to attract attention. Every time I ride a bike, I attract attention. Why not, you know, divert it and push it in the direction of the kids?
I also do some motivational speaking. You know, what kind of groups have you spoken in front of, you know, that where you've been able to influence them positively in the past with your own life experiences?
Well, I speak at a lot of corporate events. Novation Settlement Solutions, which is one of my sponsors, I must have wowed them because they said, we want you as our spokesperson. So I've done events for different corporations. I've even done it for pool companies. I've done it. Schools are the ones that bring me the most joy, because to see these kids' eyes, wide open, listening to my story, it just makes it all worthwhile. But definitely lots of corporate events. I've traveled. I just got back from the city of Pasadena last month, and I did a presentation for them. So my story is relatable. Like you mentioned, we've gone through divorce, the dating, the financial issues, the children. I'm actually a grandfather of 3. I got a whole ball of issues there, but it's a wonderful. It's life, and I'm enjoying it.
And you can hold your grandchildren, right?
Yes, correct.
That's great. That's great.
A little shaky, but I can hold them.
That's okay. That's all that matters. Yeah. And Don'tStopLiving.org is a nonprofit organization?
No, it's a corporation, and like I mentioned, I use it just to attract attention. But all the monies, anything that's donated, goes directly to the charity that I'm raising money for.
So it functions as a nonprofit, basically. Yeah. So can you take a minute? Can you tell our viewers then how they can contribute to Don'tStopLiving.org, whether it's financially or even in other ways?
Well, in this case, I'm raising money for Broward Children's Center. So bcckids.org is the organization I'm raising money for this year.
Okay, great. Now, you also have something special that you're doing in terms of sponsoring a race coming up in the short term. Do you want to talk about that for a moment?
Yeah, so this year I'm doing 25 triathlons, and each one of those races is dedicated to a child from the Broward Children's Center. And these are children with their disability levels are so, it's tough to, the lives they're going to have to live through and the challenges they're going to face are incredible. But I'm dedicating each race to a different child, and I get my medals, and later on we do a medal ceremony where I give those medals to the children. So
that's great.
Just to see them happy with a medal is incredible.
So clearly we're talking today about being fearless in retirement. I somehow can imagine that your retirement, whatever that means for you, because today with boomers and so on, retirement means different things. It's not the old model where you retire and play golf every day. But somehow I think retirement is not going to slow you down or scare you much at all after what you've been through.
I don't think so. Every time I'm in a race and I see somebody pass me by with a 7.1 or 7.2 on the back of their leg, and I'm only 50, wow, there's a lot of hope.
That's right. That's right. I ran one marathon in my life, just one, and I remember I crossed the finish line with a fellow that was in his 70s. He actually tied my score, and I'm not sure whether that's because he actually ran a good time or I just ran a bad time. But nonetheless, in closing, what words of wisdom would you bestow upon our viewers when they're starting to feel a little bit of fear when it comes to retirement, just feeling a little uncertainty as to how they can go about to living that retirement that they've always wanted? How would you advise them to overcome those fears and to put it out there and to focus on the positive, as you've done consistently through the last 26 years?
In my case, my goal is to be happy, and whatever it is, I choose to compete in triathlons. Others may want to read books. The goal is to go after happiness, overcome those obstacles that try to stop you from reaching them, whether it's to go through them, over them, or around them. Just get to it and be happy. Just find happiness.
That's great. It's interesting. I hate to even say this to you, but after my dad was killed at work, I actually had a lot of people since then who said to me, well, this is for the better because he never would have been the same. And I always thought those people were wrong. After having met you, I know they're wrong. So it's been a pleasure. It's great having you on the show.
Thank you, David.
Great.
Appreciate it.
Stay with us. We'll be right back with Morgan to talk more about fearlessness and how fearlessness can relate to your retirement. We'll be right back.